Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our live interview series where I myself, Dr. Shaan, are going to be going through with other health practitioners more about their stories, how they got started, and of course, the people that they help. Today's guest is Dr. David Serio. He's originally from USA, however, he's currently living and practicing in South America. Dr. Serio graduated in the States and then moved to Argentina. Since then, he's opened practices across Argentina, Chile, Brazil, and Spain. And he's the author of the book 33, a book on the philosophy of chiropractic with attributions from some of the best chiropractors alive today. How are things going for Serio?
Thank you so much for having me here, Shaan. It's an honor.
Anna, thank you so much for joining me. So for those people who've never been to a chiropractor before, how would you explain chiropractic to them?
Excellent. Shaan, whenever I explain chiropractic to people, I let them know that to understand it profoundly, first we have to understand a little bit about how the human body works, to put it in proper context. For me, Shaan, everything is about context. It's like if you walk into a movie theater and you're going to see a movie that you really want to see and you walk in an hour and a half late, you're not going to understand anything. So in order to understand chiropractic, for me, you have to understand a little bit about how the human body functions and its physiology and anatomy. So let's give a super basic common sense lesson here. And this is what I love, Shaan, so much about chiropractic. It's common sense. It's scientific and it's common sense. So the brain and the nerve system, which is the central nerve system, has the function, has the purpose to control and coordinate all human functions. There's 8 billion human functions taking place at every second throughout our life. So right now, us speaking, us seeing each other, listening, 8 billion human functions. I mean, just think about how unbelievable that is. And that's coordinated by your brain and your spinal cord, which is the spinal cord is actually part of the brain. So that's premise number one. And then premise number two is a simple anatomy lesson, which is the spine, the bones, the 24 movable bones, cover up that spinal cord. So the spine, we can say on a scientific level, is the center of the human body physiologically, energetically, anatomically. So it's a pretty important organ. It's a pretty important part of the human body. So here's where chiropractic is so powerful. I look at it, Shaan, as a technology. So a technology is science applied for a purpose. And so for me, chiropractic is a human technology. We have, right now we're on Zoom, we're live on Facebook. We have technology to help us communicate in life. And we also have human technologies. So chiropractic is a human technology, and its whole focus is to make sure, just like in this technology on Zoom, we want to make sure there's no interference. If one of our internets go down, we're still talking, but we're not getting the messages. So chiropractic is a very powerful human technology to make sure that the brain has perfect communication with all the cells, tissues, organs of the body, so that all 8 billion functions per second are happening in a coordinated way. Let me give you a simple example. If we have this beautiful orchestra, 300 people in the orchestra playing different instruments, we want to make sure that the conductor and the orchestra are communicating properly and that they're all in sync, they're all in harmony. And it's very simple. We're sitting there listening to this music. If there's some interference, let's say some of the instruments aren't tuned properly, the music sounds different. And that's the power of chiropractic. We have 8 billion reactions having to be coordinated by the brain every second. There has to be proper communication through the spinal system so that the body can be its best. And really, Shaan, if you think about it, all human experience takes place through this system. Not just our health and the function of the human body, all the experience when we listen, we hear, we taste, we think, it all is taking place through the human nerve system, which makes, in my opinion, one of the most powerful human technologies we can do to another human being.
I like the idea of technology, especially with a younger generation coming in that has little knowledge about chiropractic. That's so much easier to be accessed by that generation. Understand the idea of it being like almost, if your phone is underground, there's no connection. It won't be able to work.
Totally. And Sean, we're so used to, so sometimes people say, and here's the thing about chiropractic, Sean, is that it's very important, especially let's think about what's happening today. We have to adapt to certain things. We have to adapt. Number one, today, we were just talking. We've both been in quarantine for 2 months. That's somewhat of a stressful situation to be closed in your house, to not be able to do what you love. So we have to deal with all the news that's hitting us. You just open Facebook, there's a million scary posts on there, and if you're on the news. So we have to adapt to emotional things. We have to adapt to every day. There's different viruses around us. There's different chemicals hitting our body. And so really, the other day I was talking to someone about what is success actually. Success as a human being. And I read this amazing definition, and it said success is the ability to adapt and thrive in all situations. And so really when it comes to our life in the human body, the people, Darwin said this in all of his philosophy and science, the animals that adapt are the ones that not only live, but can thrive. And so it's so essential that we're adapting every second of every day. And this is why chiropractic is also a technology that's utilized on a regular basis to make sure that we're adapting to life at our maximum capability all the time throughout life.
So if we start from the very beginning, then why did you decide to become a chiropractor?
Amazing. Thank you for having me here, by the way. Chiropractic really, I like to think that chiropractic, my purpose discovered me. I was on a totally different path. I was happy in life. I went to university for marketing, and I had a great career in New York City. I had a great relationship. I was about to get married, and never been to a chiropractor in my life at that point. I was in my 20s. It's crazy, Sean, because I grew up in the United States. I found out later that my mom and my grandparents went to chiropractors all my life and never brought me. No one ever told them to bring me. And so they went to chiropractors, but were never told to bring your child. And this is one of the reasons I'm going to share with you why I'm so passionate about what I do. So I didn't have much, really didn't hear much about it, have much experience. Long story short, I was a skier in university, and I hadn't skied for a while. So I went skiing one weekend, and on Monday, I couldn't walk. And all I really thought about chiropractic was at that point was that it was something for your spine and maybe when you have pain. I didn't know much. So I really just kind of reasoned in my head, well, what do I do? If I go to a medical doctor, they're probably going to cut me open, or I don't know, give me drugs, or let me try something natural. So I end up in a chiropractor, in a chiropractic office sent by people in my work. And it was a beautiful spring day. Like in New York City, there were people everywhere. I'm sure in Singapore, on a beautiful day, there's people everywhere walking. And so I go into the chiropractor, and he doesn't really explain much. And he gives me my first adjustment. And I really left, Sean, and I had the same pain that I went in with. But when I walked out that door and walked into the street in New York City, something just shifted in my being. It wasn't physical. It was more like this deep connection to something bigger than myself. And I had to stop, and I spent about 2 hours just standing there, and I just felt this connection like I never felt before. And I didn't really know what it was at the time. I still had the same pain, but it was like, I kind of forgot about it because this was so much bigger and more profound. So at that point, I was like, what just happened to me? So his synchronicity has it, a week later, I was going to a party and my friend said, I want you to meet my new friend. He's a chiropractor. And within about 2 months, I was back in school. So the person I met, his name was Paul. He helped me to figure out how to go back to school. I quit my career, ended my relationship, and went back to school. And I just felt like whatever this is, I have no idea, but I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I ended up at Life College in Atlanta, where I met my first mentor, who was the founder of Life College. And about a year and a half later, Life College was having some problems with accreditation. I ended up at Sherman College. And there I met my next mentors, who were Reggie Gold, Arnaud Bernier, Tom Gilardi. And I graduated from Sherman College. And Shaan, one of the things that made me so passionate about chiropractic was that my life changed in every single way possible, physically, emotionally. And it's not that my life was bad before. My life was great, but I didn't know how great it could really be. You know, even little things like I was a bodybuilder at the time, and I would notice that, wow, I'm stronger now. Then I found out that Schwarzenegger was a huge chiropractic fan. And then, you know, my skiing, for example, I was like a world-class skier. Then all of a sudden I'm skiing even better. And I'm like, wow. And then my emotional state really just started to just be in a different state of like peace, could you say? So I wanted to really bring this to as many people as possible and not have them wait till they were in their 20s. You know, I was like, what if I had this since birth? You know, so I have a daughter now that's 11, that's gonna be 11, and she's had chiropractic since birth, and she understands the philosophy behind this as well. And that for me, Shaan, is another big thing. When I found out that there's a philosophy behind this, and there's a science behind this that leads to making more decisions more aligned with universal principles, it just that was it. It inspired me, and I never worked a day in my life. For me, this is something that's I get up and I'm passionate about till the minute I go to sleep. You know, we were talking on our team the other day. I must have read one of the main chiropractic books called Stevenson's about 50 times, and every time I read it, I see more and more and more that's applicable. This is why I think the word technology is so powerful, because there's scientific principles there that are applicable to every single day life. And it makes life a lot easier, healthier, more peace, more harmony, I would say.
So how did you go then from studying at Life West to practicing and owning practices in South America?
Okay, so when I graduated from Sherman, which is on the East Coast, so Life College, Shaan, is on the East Coast of the United States in Atlanta, and I went there to Sherman, which is in South Carolina. When I was at Life College, the first school, I joined a fraternity called Delta Sigma Chi, which was started by B.J. Palmer. And Rob Sinat, also, we were talking about, he's Delta. So I joined the fraternity, and I met an Argentine there. And then I left, traded schools, and kind of just wasn't so active in the fraternity. My last month at Sherman, he was walking around the school with a group of Argentines. And this was back in 1999, and Argentina was in a very bad economic place, very bad. So they were like leaving Argentina, but he invited me to meet him, like travel. So I traveled here, and honestly, it wasn't that I fell in love with the country either. I just felt like something was calling me to like, wow, this would be an incredible experience to really go somewhere where not so many people have heard of chiropractic. There was a little movement here, a little bit of a kind of a school, I would say. Some of my mentors have been here to teach. And so I just packed up with a friend and moved here, kind of on an adventure. And it was very difficult for the first few years, not speaking the language. I mean, I'm sure you know, there's challenges when you move somewhere that you don't have many connections or it's not your place. But I it was very difficult, but I had some amazing lessons that I learned. And as time went on, it just kind of, I saw how much people were connecting with chiropractic. And so I just decided to keep going. Then I got married and had a family, and um, and that's that. And it's been an amazing experience because, you know, you can go to, let's say, Miami, which is 9-hour flight from here, and pretty much everyone will at least heard the word. So they have this perception of what chiropractic is. And here, most people, Shaan, I would say, I don't know how it is in Singapore, but 90% of the people that come to us never heard the word chiropractic. So it's really amazing because as a practitioner, you know, you're their first experience. And I like being the first experience for people.
I mean, I agree. Here, there's definitely some amount of knowledge about it, and people here generally are quite well educated. So there's a lot of, and it's a very small country. It's half the size of London, but we only have 150 chiropractors for 5.6 million people. So I agree. It's there's something great about just being the first person to explain this to somebody before hopefully someone hasn't got in there and maybe confused some of the other aspects as well. Are you still in practice at the moment?
Shaan, right now, about 6 months ago, my team had grown. So I practiced for 18 years, and right now my team has grown to 50 people. And I just felt like I couldn't serve the team or my family or my practice members to the best of my ability at this size. So right now I stepped out of practice a few months ago, and I passed my practice along to an Argentine who's from here, and she's an amazing chiropractor. And I don't know where life's gonna take me after this. You know, it's like um, I've so just to kind of give you some context on this. I had a pretty big practice, anywhere between 1,200 to 1,600 people per month. You know, and I do nervous scope. I use on everyone, and so for me that was like where I wanted to be, where I could give good care. Like 300 to 400 people per week for many years, and that was by myself with a CA. And so I came to the point where I said, I want to expand this more. And last year as a team, Shaan, we saw, I think it was almost 91,000 people in the year as a team around the world. And so, you know, at first I was like really hesitant to go out of practice, and I love practicing, but I just realized I could see way more people with the vision that we're doing. But now I'm kind of rethinking, maybe I'm going to go back for the people that have been with me for years, because I love keeping my hands on people. But I'm going to do it in a little bit different way, where it's just going to be people that I've seen for like 15 years, and you know, like sort of like that, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, people that were coming up on a super regular basis.
Okay, I mean, I love the idea. That's something I see. Unfortunately, you get this mix with chiropractors where it's either like yourself, where it's the bigger picture of how many people can we help. For some people, though, especially when they do a busy practice, there is a bit of ego involved of I want to be the person that delivers this to everybody else. So I mean, I think it really should be the goal for all of us. We can always help more with 10 hands than we can with two. So it's always going to be much more productive.
Yeah, and Shaan, that was it was a very difficult decision. It's kind of like life also, but with some personal stuff, brought me into this different path. And at first, I was kind of resistant, and then more and more people started joining our team, and I started to see, wow, this is like so. Right now, one of the reasons that I kind of stepped out was to get our systems a little more structured. For example, we have a 2-month training program when you come into our team. So I wanted to get things a little more structured and organized for the next level of growth. And at that point, you know, maybe I'll go into practice a little bit more again. And you know, I really love what I'm doing now, seeing chiropractors come out and they're jumping 8 years ahead from where I was. And so, you know, this is like it was my next path, and I kind of embraced it now and just decided, well, I also need to have a little bit of balance with my family, practice, chiropractors, and it's important. You know, I have a young daughter, I'm married, so.
You mentioned before about nervoscoping. For people who have never again seen a nervoscope, I mean, in my office they see Titron, but never seen a nervoscope. Could you explain a little bit about what the purpose of a nervoscope is, and even possibly some of the kind of conditions or kind of patients you would see on a more regular basis?
Yeah, give me 1 sec. Let me see if I can grab a book real quick for you.
Sure.
I don't have my nervoscope here, but let me show you. Let me show you a picture. I don't have my nervoscopes in the practice, but let me show you a picture here. Let me just grab one real quick. Okay, so I don't know. Can you see this picture here?
Okay. Yep. See the diodes running up.
Okay, there's a chiropractor and there's a machine there. There's a little machine. So when I was in school, Shaan, at my first school at Life College, I had an amazing teacher called Pincus Neumann, who's actually in Israel now. He was from Israel and he married J. Clay Thompson's granddaughter. So they're separated now, but he had a lot of connection with J. Clay Thompson and the ideas of BJ, and J. Clay and BJ were very good friends. And so he taught me instrumentation at Life College. And he really, really instilled in me the importance of instrumentation. And there's a lot out there. I had a Titron for a while. I love the Titron as well. Different types of instruments, but the bottom line, the basic premise, Shaan, is that the most direct way we have right now to check the human nervous system is through the skin temperature at the spinal level. And so when there's these interferences, I want to back up for a second. A lot of people ask me all the time, okay, Dave, I understand the concept of chiropractic. How do you know that I don't have these things called subluxations, which are interference at the spinal level in the nervous system? How do you know that my body's adapting properly? And so the most objective way we have is through some type of instrumentation. And the nervoscope for me is one that's practical on a daily level. So I look at it like this: the Titron is an amazing instrument and it gives great information about what's going on in the patterns of the nerve system and stuff like that. And the nervoscope I found on a daily level gives me a lot of information on where I need to look for the nerve interference. So we use the nervoscope with people every visit to check objectively what's going on with their system. Do we have to put a force into their system and adjust them as a chiropractor, or do we have to leave them alone? Shaan, one of my mentors, the founder of Sherman College, Tom Gilardi, said something very powerful once in an assembly, which stuck with me forever. He said, it's just as important to understand when not to adjust someone as when to adjust someone. And I don't know what you think about that, but
I'm 100% with you. Apart from maybe some of my colleagues who work with kids, I don't really know anybody, at least within the country, who will not adjust somebody at every visit. I probably adjust maybe 40 to 50% of the time max. So no, I'm completely with you. Absolutely. So it's checking, not always putting that force into the person when they may not need it.
Exactly. We have this incredible philosophy talking about how the body has an innate intelligence, and that innate intelligence is able to adapt to life. And so it's really chiropractic when it's done specifically and I've had all types of chiropractic, and it's just, this is what resonated with me. It made sense to be checked and see if I need to be adjusted, which is what we do, is adjust people when one of those bones is a little bit out of place in a minor way. And so it's really, this is another myth about chiropractic, that it's maybe it's not gentle or scientific. And chiropractic, at least the way someone like you or me, it's specific, it's scientific, it's gentle. And that's what really attracted me to chiropractic. Like I said, the technology behind it, it's something that's scientific, that's applied in a logical way. And I tell people all the time, look, you could, after a while, so in the beginning they come in more regular, but after a while I see, you could come in here every single week. It doesn't mean I'm going to adjust you every single week. You know, I'm going to check your system. I have a little story about this. So there's a guy that's one of the wealthiest men in Argentina. He runs a big company, the biggest sugar company in South America. And so my practice is about an hour and a half from the city with traffic. And on Fridays, he would come every single week on Friday to be checked. And there would be some weeks he would come an hour and a half, get checked, and I would say, no, you're clear. And he would go back an hour and a half to work. And one time someone asked him, like, you're super busy, you run this big company. And he said, I want to make sure that I'm at my maximum all the time. So that time that it takes me every Friday, it's nothing for me, because I know at least that I'm clear and my body's adapting and it's at its best, so I could be my best.
I think sometimes even for the chiropractors that kind of get the confusion with this, they think that patients won't understand this, but this is the basis of all healthcare and sick care and dentistry and everything else. You don't go in hoping, oh yeah, I'm going to lose a tooth today. You hope that you're going to be okay. So I think it makes sense to people, to be honest.
That's a great example, Shaan. Yeah, you don't get up and go to the dentist and say, oh, I hope they drill 5 teeth today. It's like, that's a great example. Totally.
So when you're in practice then, what kind of patients were you typically seeing? Was it a mix of, say, any serious conditions? Was it more about life expression? What would be your kind of your goal for an ideal patient?
Amazing. So I have some friends that they love seeing people that weren't helped by medical doctors per se. Okay, and so I thought of it in a different way, and this is what makes chiropractic great. You get to choose what you want to focus on, you know, and that's why all of us with different values and stuff can help more people. My focus from chiropractic school, I remember one of my friends said this to me. We were at a big table. There was about 30 students sitting there eating lunch, and everyone was talking about how they wanted to have practices like, okay, all the people that the medical doctors couldn't help, and that it was like their last resort. And I said, I want to see people from birth. Like, I want to make sure they minimize those issues. Like, it's maybe not prevent them. Sometimes it's not preventable, but minimize those. I want people to be able to live their best quality of life. So my practice really had to feel like a lot of young people, a lot of families, a lot of young professionals. And I obviously I had people, I took care of people in wheelchairs and paralyzed, you know, people that were paralyzed from the neck down, and did take care of people that, you know, weren't able to get help in other ways. They found chiropractic. But I would say 90% of my practice was families and young professionals with you know, maybe a little issue brought them in, like a headache or a back pain. So they wanted, you know, but after about 6-7 years, a lot of people started coming in once the community got educated, like just for real for chiropractic. I would say, you know, Shaan, why are you here? Oh, my friend told me I need to get chiropractic and to be checked for subluxations. It took about 6 or 7 years, but it would happen about 50% of the time after that, where people were coming in for chiropractic.
So you mentioned at that point it took kind of 6 or 7 years. What do you think are some of the most important factors for your success? And then I imagine, of course, these are things you would help to teach to your associates as well.
Yeah, so one of the big things, Shaan, how long have you been in practice for now?
This is my 6th year, I believe. No, 6 years, yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, Shaan, that I see is that typically, especially due to the instance of technology, like we open up our phone, you get a message in a second. But nature, you know, nature takes time. It's principle number 6 in chiropractic, things take time. So there's no process that doesn't require time. So I think one of the biggest things to understand is that, you know, I have a friend in the restaurant business in New York City. It literally took him 10 years until his restaurant started to become like, you know, well-known, referred, all this. Things take time, you know. At the end of the day, when you have a chiropractic practice, you're opening up a new venture, and it takes time. And, you know, What I think, Shaan, is that most chiropractors, maybe they start with good intentions, like I want to educate my community. I want my community to understand the importance of being checked for subluxations. And then they get frustrated because it takes so much time. And you know, there's ways when you're mentoring people, like I see on my team, for example, it's taken them 50% of the time that it took me because they have the systems in place from what I learned. But still, you're not going to build a dream practice overnight. And I remember one of my mentors, his name's Joe Donofrio, 62 years in practice now, and he learned from Reggie, and so he told me, Dave, don't talk to me for 5 years. 5 years is the point where people are gonna start to know what you're doing and who you are and your message. And so, I think the biggest thing, Shaan, is for Kairos to understand if they're doing the right thing. It takes time for your community to really connect, trust you, because the bottom line, Shaan, if you don't have a relationship with people, you could be the best chiropractor in the world. They need to also know who you are. You move to Singapore, no one knows you. You're different. They need to trust you first and know who you are. And you have to develop a relationship. You're touching their nerve system and their spine. So, anyone that thinks they're going to get out there and, build this huge practice overnight, can it be done? Yes. But typically that's not the case. And typically, if it's done that way, it's not something that's solid, where it's long lasting, like any relationship.
I've heard this from a number of people that they're saying when you start a practice, don't try to start by seeing 20 or 100 new people in a week. No, try to see two. Try to do things well and just hone in the systems that you're using and, of course, how you're expressing yourself to people and everything else.
Exactly. And for me, Shaan, the biggest thing is this. I personally never touched anyone as a chiropractor without them having what we call an orientation. So wherever you go to our practices in the world, they're going to have an orientation, which is about a 45-minute interactive. I almost think of it like a theater. I don't look at it like this class. It's like the place. I wish someone told me when I first got in chiropractic, gave me like an or my parents, because maybe as a kid I would have had chiropractic. So what it is they're choosing our service with their wallet. They're paying for this. So I want them to choose it under the proper context. Like, this is what we do. This is what we don't do. This is how we can help transform your life. If this is what you want, this is the place. But they go in understanding very clearly what they're getting, how we do it, because this is a two-way street. It's a relationship. It's not just we're doing something to them. They're engaged in the process. So that for me also, Shaan, is one of the biggest things. All the time chiropractors tell me people don't get it. No, in my city they don't get it, and that's we're all human beings. We all have the same physiology, all have the same anatomy. The problem is a lot of chiropractors don't teach people what it is. So of course they're not going to get it.
What are some goals that you have at the moment, either for Vida, the chiropractic company you run, or for chiropractic in general, even outside of Argentina?
Great questions. Okay, so I thought about this actually the last few weeks. In terms of our team, right now my main goal, I don't really, just like the practice, Shaan, I really never think about so much like, oh, I need a certain amount of people, I want to grow this. I just always think about the quality and the message we're putting out. And so right now my goal in Vida Chiropractic is to really improve all of our systems and just to take it to another level in terms of our professionalism, our practices, our systems. And the team grows naturally, organically, as chiropractors hear about us and stuff. So really my first goal with the team is to really get the systems even more refined for ourselves to be able to grow our team. My second goal right now is I'm going to work on another book. And the book is going to be, I don't really want to share what the theme is yet. So, but it has to do with the 33 principles as well. So that's starting in the works. I want to really get more information in Spanish as well, because the whole Spanish community has very little chiropractic information in terms of the chiropractors as well as the people. And that's my second goal there. And the third goal is kind of personal. I've been studying NLP and coaching, just to be better as a chiropractic coach and mentor. And so I'm finishing that right now. And then a long-term goal is some type of school. And that's kind of like, that's definitely on the vision board, is to open some type of school. I don't know if it's going to be a post-grad school of chiropractic or a school of chiropractic, like a traditional school, but that's definitely on the vision board there, is to open a school of chiropractic.
You mentioned about the book. What drew you to write 33?
Well, for example, there's amazing literature in chiropractic. There's also new literature in chiropractic, but I always felt like I wanted to have something very simple. Like if you pick up Stevenson's or Joe Strauss's books are more simple, but they're typically written by one author, which is amazing, and in one point of view, and they're typically not for both the student and like a chiropractor and a non-chiropractor. And so my vision really with writing books, and as I go forward, I'm going to write more and more, but it's just really anyone can pick up a book that I write, and it's simple, and also it's for both the chiro and the non-chiro. So actually 33 we made in Spanish for non-chiros. We changed a little bit, and we made that book into like a book for the public. We changed some of the parts, but going forward, that's kind of my vision on writing books now, is it's got to be for everyone. They can pick it up and they learn principles of life, the 33 principles, but for both chiro and non-chiro, and really to keep it simple. You know, if I really want to go deep into philosophy, I'll pick up something like Stevenson's. You know, if I want to look at a modern version of that, I'll look at Sinat's books or Strauss's books. But I also like getting a lot of people involved in the book. So that with 33, there was I think there was 46 different chiropractors that wrote in there. So and I also like mixing it up with practical tips. So if you're a chiro or you're a dentist, you can kind of look at that and say, oh, I can incorporate this into my practice. So that's kind of like my vision for the niche I saw that wasn't there. You know, and is it all totally aligned perfectly with the philosophy? I think no, because, you know, as human beings, as a profession, you're going to find in chiropractic, everyone has their own little twist on things. So, you know, it's not that I necessarily even agreed with everything in my book, but I wanted to get a whole perspective of ideas there.
For anyone who hasn't read it, I've read the book, I have the book, and it's every single part of the 33 principles is written by a different author or set of authors, and then of course it's linked together by David. So it's this very interesting change of narratives. It's almost like, say, if you're listening to a book and it's always someone's internal monologue, but it keeps changing characters all the way through. It's like Game of Thrones. You keep changing from one character to another, but it's just, yeah, it's very fluid. It's very easy to read.
Thank you. And the idea also, Shaan, I have when I'm writing a book is you can pick it up, you know, and actually one of my mentors, Joe Donofrio, told me this is one of the greatest books for when I go to the bathroom, for example. He's like, I want to be able to pick up a book and just open it up. You know, when I'm in a like where I have 5 minutes, I want to be able to open it up, just read a piece and kind of like think about it. So that's also the idea of the book, is like, you know, it's not something that you need to go from the beginning to the end. You can just pick it up and say, got it for the day. So
I think it's great for students as well, especially from some of the schools. Let's say myself, I went to ACC, which is not very philosophically strong. I think it's a great way to kind of like edge in. It's not like you don't run up to a big dog, you walk slowly up to it. Same kind of thing with the book. It's more approachable for those students who maybe don't have this kind of exposure.
thank you. That was really the purpose, to make the philosophy kind of approachable. And you know, I had some of the critiques where, oh, it wasn't totally clear in the philosophy, or it wasn't like deep, and that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was someone like yourself, that you go to a school where you never heard the philosophy, and you open this up and you're like, okay, this is simple. It makes sense. I want to dig more. And then you dig more into other deeper books. That's kind of like the whole purpose behind it. And when you have a lot of different characters, it's like maybe one you don't connect with, but the next one you're like, okay, I really connect with this. So that was that. Thank you. That was actually the idea. It's still on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. So.
And so going out to sort of the advice for other people, say, who are on lockdown, either in South America or here in Singapore, what kind of advice would you give them? Say more for patients, some things they can do right now.
I'm sorry, the first part it got cut off a little bit.
So of course we're still currently on lockdown, and I know for yourself, you mentioned it'll be going until June 8th. What kind of advice would you give for patients at the moment who are still locked down at home?
Okay, chiropractors or people, the people that come to us?
People, actually the people that come to us, the ones we serve.
Okay, so this was actually the longest. So I usually get my spine check, Shaan, once a week or every 15 days, in that range for the last 20 years. Like I said before, it doesn't mean I get adjusted, but I get my spine checked that regular. And this was the longest I've been without it. So it was like I was able to go the other day because we were open, like, somewhat. So basically, there's nothing that replaces chiropractic. So there's not like, you know, okay, you could go do these exercises and now it's a replacement. So, you know, I tell people all the time, if I get chiropractic and then I go to yoga, I'm not going to be a yoga master. They're totally different things. You know, just like sleep, you can't substitute good nutrition for sleep. If you eat the best food in the world, you still need to sleep. So chiropractic's kind of the same. It stands on its own. So really, if you're in lockdown and you can't see a chiropractor, you're not going to be able to replace that with something else. You know, so you just have to wait until the chiropractor's open, and then when they're open, go back a little bit more regular. You know, like I started going back twice a week again to make sure that my spine is kind of checked, and it took like 4 visits to get it back to where it was, and now I'm okay again for every 15 days, once a week.
And so before we end today, kind of going a little bit more personal, if you could give yourself some advice, say 5 or even 10 years ago, what kind of advice would you want to give to yourself?
Great question. Thank you. These are great questions.
I mean, it's great answers, honestly.
Okay, so Shaan, couple things that actually hit me like yesterday with something nothing to do with chiropractic. It's about investing. So I had this book on my shelf from Tony Robbins called Money, and I picked it up. And so I've been investing personally. Like once I started to learn about a little bit about how money works, I started investing very young. Not very young, like later in life. But it's been like 10, 12, 15 years I started really investing. And I read this book and I'm like, I'm doing it all wrong still. So the advice, I kind of beat myself up, and then I realized, well, I did the best I could with the information. And this is really like a metaphor for all aspects of our life. So there's a couple things I want to say to this to answer your question. Number one, we always do the best we can with the information. But what's really powerful to me is we have to, in my opinion, if we want to advance a lot faster in life, find mentors. You know, if I read this book and I was thinking, oh, if I had a mentor to teach me how to invest or tell me which books to read, or I would have been so much further along in this, you know? And that's just one part of my life where I didn't have a mentor really. I just tried to do it on my own, which worked out okay, but I could be much, much better off in that area. So it's the same with chiropractic, you know, or any aspect of your life you want to improve on. And so I think the big thing for me is my ego was too big. I had amazing mentors in chiropractic, but still my ego was too big to think that I kind of like, oh, I have these great mentors, I know the answer. It still took me like 10 years to figure out how to practice, even having these amazing mentors. So if I could say anything to myself, it would be really seek out mentors that are really resonating with, like Tony Robbins talks about this, model yourself after people. So find out who's getting the results you want in terms of whether it's investing or chiropractic or whatever it is, relationships, and be mentored by them. And you'd be so much further ahead in life.
I agree. I think that's great advice for students as well, especially in chiropractic. It's great to try and go out on your own, but it's really helpful to have someone to really learn from. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, and a lot of, you know, I see a lot of young people have the same ego as myself. You know, they think they got it, or and it's totally different when you enter the real world. You know, and even it's, I don't know. This is BJ had this great quote: as ego expands, innate contracts. And for me, Shaan, one of the biggest lessons I had in my life in the past 20 years was really like, when you minimize the ego, you realize that you don't know anything. You become a constant student of life and you stay humble. That's where the magic of life happens, and that's where you start to master things. But if you have this ego that you know it all, or for example, oh, the other night we were studying the normal complete cycle on our team, and if you're like, oh, I heard that, I heard that in school, I don't need to listen to this again, you lose, because mastery is about repetition, and it's about, so once our ego diminishes and we realize like there's people that know this a lot better than me, let me find those people and learn from them, you could be so much further ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today, David. And thank you everyone who's watching this either live or watching on the replay. If you have any questions, I've tagged David into the post in the description itself. So of course you can reach out to him, especially if you are in South America. If you have any questions for me, you can either give me a call or WhatsApp, an email, or put them in the comments and I'll make sure I get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thank you, Shaan. I'll give you 1 second. I'm going to open up. I just opened a new, give me 1 second. I'll tell you what this is. I just opened up a new fan page, so it's easy to get to me on. It's at David Serio 123 on Facebook.
Okay. So I'll make sure it gets tagged in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.